Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition, overdue edition of the news. Uh, this evening's news I've titled The Roadmap News because today there has been an announcement from number 10 Downing Street outlining the roadmap, as Mr. Johnson called it, the one-way journey to the end, whatever that means, because he did say we were approaching the end back in December, January. Anyway, we all know that what they say isn't quite what's really happening. So it's good to be here. Good to see you all. I hope you've had a nice, pleasant weekend. I hope everybody's remaining healthy, looking after themselves, staying sane, ensuring that their spiritual fabric, amongst other things, is all intact, and making sure we're connected with ourselves in a way to keep that suit of armor, as it were, working nicely. I found that in my own experiences recently, if I concentrate a bit more on what I have to do on a daily basis, a lot of all this nonsense doesn't affect me as much. So I have to be a little bit careful that I don't let too much of it in and don't let it occupy even my mind too much. Take a lot of it with a pinch of salt, and take it day by day, as it were, live in the moment, the here and now, and all that good stuff. I know it's hard to get away from, especially when you're dealing with people on a daily basis, most of whom are of the other side, as it were. I'll say that cautiously. They're not the bad guys or anything like that. They're just informed differently, let's say. Anyway, getting back to this edition, as it were, I made a few notes from today's announcement. There was Messrs. Johnson, our Prime Minister here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. There was Monsieur Whitty, and there was Herr Valens. Thought I'd give it a bit of a European touch there. And so the three amigos were on stage performing this evening, and they presented their concoction of gruel that is to be handed out to an audience, as it were, begging almost for some sort of light at the end of what seems never-ending tunnel. And so I made a couple of points, or notes I should say. They were the ones making the points, but I made a couple of notes. This whole thing this afternoon, evening, has been put down in form of a step program, as it were. And what they've done is they've put it into 4 steps, and if there's certain things that have to be kind of adhered to, or targets have to be met and all that sort of stuff before they go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4. It's all very steppy. But it all is supposed to be kicking into action on the 8th of March. Remember, we spoke about this a little while back, that kids and all that were supposed to be back at school by February midterm, blah, blah, blah. Of course, we've had February midterm. School is resumed today, here in the UK anyway. And of course, the furlough scheme, as we knew, was going to be on until March anyway. We knew that last year. So we kind of knew that it was going to be until March anyway. Well, 8th of March is the date that's set for step 1 to possibly kick into place. And by the way, the furlough scheme has been extended until the summer now. So I won't hold my breath in terms of lockdowns and all that sort of stuff being lifted just yet. But this is at least what how the puppets have been told to dance on this act of the piece. So step 1, I just noted it down. On the 8th of March, students are can read this properly, returning to school and colleges. So we're talking primary school, secondary school, and colleges, etc. But the thing that gets me on this one a little bit, and I made a note of it, and it's also in the summary that you can have a look at on the government website. I'll come to that again a little bit later on, and I'll give you the details for that. You can click on the links and have a look yourself. It's very up to date. But the thing that they made a point of today was the fact that they want kids tested twice a week, which I find is quite astounding. First of all, why test them anyway? But secondly, why twice a week? And I've always said, sort of right from the start of all of this, that I was almost more worried about the testing procedures themselves than the actual vaccine. They're both worrying, of course they are. But the testing procedure and the enthusiasm behind getting everybody tested kind of says it all to me, really. Because if you get tested positive, you get tested positive. I mean, the only thing that you're ever advised to do is to stay at home and safe-isolate for 10 days, right? So what difference does it make whether you test positive or not? Because allegedly, if you don't have the symptoms, you can, or if you're asymptomatic, you can pass it on anyway. Don't forget, you have to act like you've got it, even if you haven't, and all that sort of thing. And we spoke about that as well. Munchausen disease by proxy, not Munchausen syndrome, I should say, by proxy, not Munchausen syndrome. In other words, telling people often enough that they are ill when they're not ill, as opposed to telling yourself you're ill. And that is quite a thing, really. So testing them twice a week. Now, I don't know whether that's mandatory in terms of there is absolutely no exemption to that. I have no idea. The reason why that gets a bit confusing is because later on in their update on their stage, the three of them were talking about how the risk for children was incredibly low. So which is it? I'm a bit confused. Yet they're also talking about that the greater use of testing and greater use of masks will, however, be necessary for kids. And this idea and notion is supported by teachers and all those in the teaching profession. And teachers were also mentioned as not being in a high-risk profession at all. Well, yeah, obviously, because kids aren't at risk, Anyway, so I just found that really quite odd. I mean, it's all odd, and it's all ambiguous, and it's all gaslighting, and it's all confusion tactics and all that. Obviously, of course it is. It's supposed to be. And I've not looked at the official stuff for a while now, or listened into the radio, or watched any television or anything like that for quite a while. Don't know why I thought it was going to get any better when I decided to this evening, but I did, and it's the same old nonsense. I could have not watched anything for 12 months from this time last year, to this time this year, switched the TV on, and I would have thought it would have been the next day, sometime last January, February. Nothing's changed. In fact, even the three of them on stage look the same. Anyway, so that's step one. That should be on the 8th of March. That is commencing. The 4-step roadmap. They're trying to offer a route, I'm just reading it here, a route back to a more normal life. Right. Then, part of step one is also on the 29th of March that they are hoping to allow outdoor gatherings of up to 6 people. Here we go again with the rule of 6. And also 2 households can meet up and, I don't know, do what households do, I suppose. Have a chat, go for a walk, whatever. Drive out somewhere. Whatever it is. Anyway, that's all supposed to be part of step one. Or kicking off on the 8th of March. The 4 steps. Can't make this stuff up. Well, they have. Anyway, on the 12th of April, all things permitting, step 2 is supposed to kick into play. And step 2 will be no earlier than the 12th of April, and I shall read to you roughly what it says. It says that they will see an opening of non-essential retail, personal care premises such as hairdressers and nail salons, public buildings including libraries and community centres. Now, I'm a little bit confused again, because I know for a fact, for example, that there are things like AA meetings, etc., that are open right now. And I know also for a fact that places of worship are open. So gathering with lots of people in a certain setting is absolutely okay, because they have been for a while now. In fact, this time last year, roughly this time last year, when the first major lockdown happened, all of it was shut down. In fact, this time round, and this is what I was saying to a few people, it actually wasn't as bad this time as what it was first time round. But people had that feeling it was worse, because I think the involvement with the vaccination and all that sort of stuff, the whole rollout, gave it the impression of impending doom, as it were. But people have been gathering. People have been going to places of worship. People have been going to meetings in the evenings and stuff like that, I know. And I know also that there are services who have simply remained closed because, in their words, it's been too much hassle for them to reopen. But it's not like they were forced to close or had to shut down. So, just as a kind of a little side note, there was most definitely opportunities to open places or use communal areas. Anyway, reading on. Indoor leisure facilities such as gyms will also reopen, but only for use by people on their own or in household groups. Well, household groups, what does that mean? Does that go back to then the other point, which is that it can only be a maximum of 2 households? Right? When is a household a household? What if I change address every day? What if I have no fixed abode, but I change my address regularly because I need to get hold of my post, my mail, or whatever? What does a household, what actually does household mean? I know what they say or think it means, but not everybody lives in a perfect family setting of 2 kids and a dog, right? It's not as easy in black and white as that. I know people who've changed address. I'm one of them. When I first came to England, for example, I mean, I changed address in the first after a year and a half, 2 years, I moved around quite a bit. I had about 3 or 4 different addresses in the space of 7-8 months, with just the nature of what was going on at that time, until eventually I got the place I wanted to, where I wanted to move in. So it's one of those things that's very, very grey, and I don't know who is the person that's going to clarify that, should it come to the crunch. Should there be a knock on the door one day saying, "Oh, how many households are you?" Well, what on earth is that? How can you prove or disprove anything there? Especially knowing how uninformed the members of the law enforcement establishments are, let's just say, very cautiously, because half of them don't really know. Anyway, so most outdoor attractions and settings, including outdoor hospitality venues, zoos, theme parks, and drive-in cinemas, will also be open. Zoos. Self-contained accommodation such as campsites and holiday lets, where indoor facilities are not shared with other households, can also reopen. Hospitality venues will be allowed to serve people outdoors at step 2, and there will be no need for customers to order a substantial meal with alcohol drinks and no curfew, although customers must order, eat and drink while seated. They're forcing us to take it away at the moment. Now they're asking us to sit down. Confused. Anyway, being a bit facetious there, because I know that pubs and restaurants and stuff are closed at the moment. Yeah, so anyway, that is step 2. I'm not going to read it all because there's a lot in there. In fact, to be honest with you, there should be much, much more in there, because, like I said, there's a lot of grey zone in there, as far as I'm concerned. But then what do I know? So that will be step 2, and that's all supposed to commence from the 12th of April. And then once you've had your hair cut and you've had your nails done and you've gone to buy your socks because the shackles are off, we enter the realms of step 3, which commences no earlier than the 17th of May. Right, and step 3 is quite interesting because, and I'll get to it, it talks about other indoor locations to open. I'll have a little look at this and then I'll just read it to you. So it says, step 3, open stadia will be opened, open stadia, football stadiums and that sort of stuff. But of course there's a caveat to that, because it will then still be limited as to how many people. I think they're talking about 10,000 people will be allowed into a venue. Obviously, if the venue only holds 10,000, it won't be full capacity. It will be that size and then whittled down to a percentage of the capacity that will be allowed in. What on earth, what they think the difference makes, I have no idea. Whether you have 10,000 in a 50,000 arena or 35,000 in a 50,000 arena, what's the difference? Apart from 25,000 people, I know that, but I mean, it's just stupid. It just does not make sense at all, as we already know. But I just keep emphasizing it just so that anybody out there like me who sometimes questions themselves and thinks, am I on the right track here or am I getting this all wrong? No, we're not getting it all wrong at all. We are most definitely on the right track. It all stinks to high heaven. It ain't right, hasn't been right, won't ever be right. And we are right. Right, so step 3, pubs, concert halls and pubs will also be open. Now, they initially said that pubs only outdoors, not go back to a pub and sit down and have a game of pool and put some music on the jukebox and stuff and chat someone up at the bar, whatever you do in a pub. But anyway, that's step 3. So as soon as possible and by no later than step 3, we will also update the advice on social distancing between friends and family, including hugging. But until this point, people should continue to keep their distance from anyone not in their household or support bubble. It's step 3 include indoor entertainment venues such as cinemas and children's play areas. Well, I thought children weren't really affected by this, but then they are, but then they're not. The new variant back when I did a video a couple of months ago particularly affected children. Now they're saying the risk for children is incredibly low, yet they want to do 2 tests a day on secondary kids. I keep pulling a face because I'm still, a year in and I'm still not worked anything out yet, really. I try to, but all attempts really are futile, aren't they? Right, let's move on to step 4. Step 4 kicks in no earlier than the 21st of June. So I'm wearing glasses for my paperwork down here and reading that over there without my glasses because it's a bit further away. It's easier to read. Do excuse the confusion there. Step 4, 21st of June. All limits on social contact to be lifted. We can say goodbye to the most restraining measures. That was announced today. So all limits on social contact to be lifted, which is quite interesting. So we got here that the government will complete a review of social distancing and other long-term measures that have been put in place to cut transmission. Radio transmission? This will inform decisions on the timing and circumstances under which the rules on 1 meter plus, the wearing of face coverings and other measures may be lifted. This will also inform guidance of working from home. By step 4, which will take place no earlier than the 21st of June, the government hopes to be in a position to remove all legal limits on social contact. Again, we have to pay attention to the wording and the narrative. When it talks about hopes to be in a position to remove, well, that's a double question. Hopes to, and then be in a position. You can be in a position to move something and still not move it, can't you? And you can also hope to and not be in a position. I mean, it's just all nonsense, the whole talk, the chit-chat. For me, it's quite clear what's going on here, and I don't want to be influencing people's thoughts, but it's clear that it's just setting it up to keep it rolling and going all the time, probably forevermore. Right, moving on quickly because I'm going to be running out of time otherwise. I'm not going to go into the other stuff that I wrote down in too much detail. All I will say is that they were talking about certification today for people who vaccinated, not vaccinated, and Mr. Johnson himself said that the problem with certifying whether people have been vaccinated or not is there'll be discrimination as an obstacle. So he said the best way to circumvent that would be to just vaccinate everybody, and in that way discrimination doesn't become an obstacle or a problem. Okay, so I thought that was worth noting and mentioning. And of course, they were going on other stuff about under 65s being vaccinated, and if under 65, then only those with underlying health issues, etc., etc. Now we've got the thing about France, Germany, and a few other countries not wanting to vaccinate anybody over 65 at the moment, and they've got issues with certain products from certain companies that are involved in the development of this vaccine, I guess, let's call it that, etc., etc. So everybody's pretending to be doing their own thing and arguing and rowing. It's all a rollout. It's all an agenda. Governments per se have no say in the matter. It's being done. It's being rolled out, and that's it. It's simple. Right. Okay. I'm going to end it on a slightly more positive note. Just to highlight, I whistled through that a bit quickly. I just realised that there's quite a bit more that I was going to talk about, but I don't want to make this an unnecessarily long video. 25 something minutes will do. So I can always say that in the next video that I'll do probably by the end of the week. But one thing I will mention to you towards the end, first of all, I'd like to just mention that Mr. Fauci, he was quoted today by Mr. Vallance. Remember Vallance, one of the chief advisors to our government, our mind controllers. Mr. Fauci allegedly said, according to Mr. Vallance, who's a major shareholder in GlaxoSmithKline, that mask wearing will probably be expected next winter. In other words, when we hit to the seasonal parts of the year where people become particularly ill, as is an annual thing, then mask wearing will be part of those procedures that will take place. So creating normality within normality and all that. Anyway, just to end on one or two stats. The first stat is that overnight there were 1,500 admissions to UK hospitals for COVID-related patients. Right, 1,500, and we know that there are 1,257 hospitals now. Worked out that overnight admissions, and we also know what admissions mean, doesn't mean necessarily a bed. It just means registered as having gone to a hospital, whether it's blood test or weighing yourself on scales, doesn't matter. They're all admissions. Works out at just over one person per hospital overnight. So, tell me that appears to be a terrible, terrible state of pandemia that warrants all these measures, considering that the vaccines and everything else don't necessarily work and all the rest of it, and we'll have to still wear face masks and this, that, and the other, you still contract, you still pass it on and everything else. So it's clearly not the vaccines that have been creating these sudden drops in numbers, even though they're saying it has, or there is the reason. But I thought I'd just mention that. Notice how we're exiting the coffee, coldy season, and suddenly people with symptoms, etc., plummeting. And also, just to really, really end it right now, that is that up to this point in the UK, there have been around about 120,000 deaths since this whole pandemic officially started. And with a population of 68 million, that works out at 0.176% of the population who have succumbed to anything COVID related. Doesn't even mean to say you've died of COVID at all. It just means you've tested positive within the last 28 days and have since popped your clogs. Maybe you've been pooed on by an oversized pigeon and you've been crushed to death. Doesn't matter. COVID will be on your certificate. So there we go, 0.176%. Even though the numbers have been fudged, that's how low it is. Right, on that note, because I've got to go, I wish you all a good week. I hope you stay safe, look after each other, stay in touch with each other, with like-minded people and everything else. It's vital at this stage. And we'll speak again all very, very soon. Thank you for supporting my channel. It's a very good night from him up there. And it's a good night from me. Take care. Speak soon. Bye-bye.